Okay. Clap one on three. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Fantastic. I forgot we were recording today,
I wasn't gonna out you.
and I didn't want to out myself, but then it just came out of my mouth.
Of course.
Yeah, I've been traveling and whatnot. There's been a lot going on. And Christy sent me, like, here's the info for tonight's episode. And I went, are we recording tonight? And she said, this is the night, the only night you said you were available. To which I responded, yeah, now that I think about it, this is the only night I'm available. Good thing we're doing this. But it's
So
just it was a
past you knew.
yes.
Yeah,
My lizard brain knew.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like that past you was like, I better say this now
Yes,
to do future me a solid.
exactly.
And then it worked out.
Listen, I'm up in Canada. I'm up in Toronto, Ontario. Oh, Canada.
Hmm.
Um, and I was at this music festival over the weekend. I was at the All Your
Oh,
Friends festival for the weekend. So that
beautiful.
torpedoed a lot of I'll say it, my brain. Um, Not that I partied that hard. The first day, I was drinking. I
Of
was doing my
course.
thing. And then overnight, between day one and day two, I just had a terrible rumbly in my tumbly, like just
Mm.
a terrible situation. And I was like, maybe I'm not going to be able to go for the second day of this. And
Oh,
then I got up and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, get your shit together, Ash.
yeah.
You're not a quitter. You rally.
Hmm.
That's what you do.
Hmm.
And I did. And I did.
Hey.
Yeah, with the help of a lot of modern medicine. A lot of modern medicine helped me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, yeah, I was trying to find the Imodium in the house, couldn't find it. Uh, Started taking some Pepto, then found a literal pile of Imodium, and I was just like, this is it. This is 42.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
remember the last time that I've been to a and I've done 2 full days at a music festival. I don't remember
Mm.
the last time I did that. And then I was thinking, was it the time you and I went to the Warp Tour and we went to see the Used and it was pouring rain? So we
Yeah.
literally watched the Used and then left.
Yeah. I mean, and the joke is, we weren't even mad.
No,
We were just
no.
like, we really came for this. We can go now.
Yeah, yeah,
God, that was a beautiful thing.
it was.
I don't know that I could do a multi-day festival, like
Yeah.
an outdoors
Mm-hmm.
porta potty,
Mm-hmm.
wander around, not really a nice, cozy place that I can rest my rump. Fuck, I'm old.
Rest my rump. That is a new one. We have not heard that one before on the show. I'm
Just,
writing it down.
it's the joke that I don't turn on the microphone with the intent to age myself.
Yeah.
And yet, every time I manage to do it, I thought I was going to age myself simply by saying I don't think I could do physically a multi day festival.
Yeah.
And then I had to go and talk about a rump.
Hmm.
What a ding dong. Just an absolute ding dong. Um, Now, but this was like you got to go home at the end of the night to an actual bed. This isn't like a you're tenting it situation.
We did choose to drive home. Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah. I had Sweet Bean at the house
Oh, of course.
and I had people hang out with her during the daytimes and everything, but I was like, I won't leave her alone overnight, obviously. So I was like, let's just drive back between. And thank God. Thank
Yes.
There is a sweet, merciful God that that allowed that to happen. Because
Hmm.
if I had woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning with the tummy troubles that I was having, if I had been, God forbid, camping, no,
Ooh,
no,
even a nearby hotel wouldn't have been ideal for.
no, no. For those kinds of situations, you want to be in your own home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I don't know. Like, I mean, I could do, I love that. I could do part of a day.
Hmm.
I don't know. I could do a full day. Um, the closest at my age that I get to like any sort of like multi-day festival, um, is doing multiple days at the West End Mall. And that's indoors, so many bathrooms, uh, many, many rump resting places. Not always comfortable, but it's still a place for your rump. And but
She's
at the end,
rump. She's rump. She's rump. She's sitting down.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Um, I mean, the only I did say like it's indoors and all that air conditioned, beautiful. It doesn't mean I'm not wearing a neck fan and that I'm not taking extra breaks like
Yeah.
the elderly woman that I am. Um, did it last year and I thought that was like a fun one-time summer thing with the kids. They're gonna want to do something else this year. They requested to go back.
Mm.
So I'm like, pack the neck fan, which the joke is I purchased on that trip last year. Um, because I mean, and this year I'm determined this is the time I'm gonna get the Crocs. I'm gonna go to the Crocs store. I'm gonna see what's up.
The Croc store at the West Edmonton Mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're just gonna see what happens.
That should be your first stop.
I have a feeling it should be. I think as soon as I walk in with a neck fan, they'll be like, you've come to the right place. Because I feel people that walk around with neck fans probably also want comfortable feet.
Yeah, I think that most retail workers, like if they see somebody coming in wearing a neck fan, they're like, "Get out the way.
Yeah.
Move."
Yeah. The joke is, it also wasn't a case at that point when I bought it. It wasn't that I was just like, it's so hot. It's just, it wasn't like the building was hot or I was hot because I was moving. I was just hot because I was 40
Yeah.
and my body was like betraying me badly. So my family's like, it's fine. I don't know what you're doing. And I'm just sopping because I'm so hot. And I'm like, I know you guys don't understand. I'm like, it's because I'm a 40-year-old woman. This is the slap in my face that I get for making it this far.
Making it this far. Yeah.
Ah, God, but so yeah, I'm not built for multiple outdoor days. I'm not built for um multiple days in a non-home location. I mean,
In a
I
non-home.
did I did do the zoo last year in
Right.
Calgary. That was something. Like
That's
so that was
multiple
an
outdoor days.
that was well, we it was one day, but still. And and then I ended up running into a friend of yours
That's right.
of
A friend of ours.
yes, of all places, both of us far from home, and we just
Hmm.
happened to be at the same place at the same time. Um, and she got to witness just the so hot. I don't know if I had the I don't think I had the neck fan yet.
I don't think you had adopted the neck fan into your world yet.
Yeah.
How often now are you pulling out that neck fan?
Um, very rarely. There have been a
Oh,
couple of times. Well, the joke is I would pull it out more if I wasn't embarrassed. There are times where I'm like, oh, I want to use it, but I'm just worried people will judge me in public. I need to not care about that. There was a moment recently where we had to go to an event and we're like, it's going to be so crowded, it's going to get hot. And so took this like envelope that I had and I folded it in like accordion style and stapled the end and made my own mini fan. And my husband was like, just bring your neck fan. And I said, I can't because we're indoors and it's going to be, people are going to hear noises and the fan will sometimes make like a bzzz kind of sound. And I can't be the one making that noise. So I'm like, I'll just take my rustic fan. and it worked out just fine. Um, but there are a lot of times where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so hot. And then all of a sudden I just hear from like across the house, where's your neck fan? So my
I
family's
remember when you got the neck fan, you were like, this is an absolute revelation.
it's a
It's a
dream.
game changer.
It
It's a
is.
dream.
Yeah. I should use it more than I do.
I just feel
But
like, yeah, people want to judge, let them.
yeah, I'm the one that's relaxed with a fan. Um, I will say I've used it multiple times sitting in my own home where we'll like be out somewhere for like a sport and it's so hot. And then you get home and you're like, there's no amount of temperature that's cooling me down fast enough.
Mm.
So then you sit, or sorry, rest your rump. And then rest your rump, slap on a neck fan, and away you go.
I respect it.
Yeah, this is 40. Like I can't deny that this is just where I'm at. This is it.
Yeah.
I
And
have to
listen,
accept it.
I feel like if anybody's looking at anybody and being like, oh, ha ha ha, look at that person with their neck fan, like it's coming for them too.
Oh, eventually it will. Yeah.
It's only a matter of time.
The beautiful thing will be the moment they go, God, I am hot. And it's like, oh, are you? I'm getting a beautiful breeze.
Yeah.
I've already got for our trip this summer, I already have a list where I have written neck fan on the list because I'm like, I have to have it just in case.
I
Just
think
in
you should be
case.
carrying it at all times in the summer. Why not?
Oh, I should have it in my purse at all times.
Yeah.
I need to start carrying a purse because that's the joke of my life. I haven't for almost my entire life. Very rarely, like if I'm out of town or on a trip somewhere, I'll have a purse for that moment. But if I'm like, ooh, I gotta go to the store, cell phone in a pocket, wallet in a pocket, out the door.
Yeah.
Because I like to be hands free. And I know people are like, well, they just get a purse, some sort of a purse that straps to you somehow. And I go, nope. But I have to get used to a purse because I think I just need to start carrying more things.
Yeah.
I think I need to accept that.
I mean, I know that you have had cute purses over the years.
Yeah. Rarely use a purse.
Yeah.
It's just a weird, and I don't know why. Because in the end, then I've got like 8 things in my hands, and I'm like, just get a fucking purse.
They do serve a purpose.
Thank you so much. It was right there.
I couldn't help it.
It was right there.
I couldn't help it.
It was like a neck fan on a hot day. Right there.
Yeah.
Exactly what you needed.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
And to be honest,
Yeah.
possibly people would be envious to see it. That's the other thing. You get self-conscious about the neck fan. I bet you
Yeah.
there's a certain percentage of people that are going to look at you and go, "Wish I had that."
Oh, I truly believe when I bust it out, because I'm probably going to, and I'm walking around that mall, I'm gonna get a where'd you get that?
Hmm.
And it's like best thing I ever did.
This could make you friends. You could connect with people over this.
You're right. You're right, I could. And who knows how many connections I'll make with Crocs.
Yeah. I'm excited for you to try the Crocs.
I'm excited to see what it's about. I'm excited to see, is this just going to be life now? Am I going to have like 8 pairs of Crocs all of a sudden? Am I
I
going to
do
buy one, try it out, and then all of a sudden I'm turning around back to the store?
I do think it's a slippery slope. Yeah.
Mm, I've got to be prepared for that.
It's like me and the Labubus.
Oh, well, we haven't talked about that publicly.
I know. And listen, folks, here's the deal. It's like every day I knew of Labubus. I was like, I don't want that. I'm not interested. And then one day it's just like a switch was flipped and I was like, I want them with the fire of 1,000 suns.
Hmm.
Anyway, long story short, it's very boring. But it's hard to get them. There's ways you can do it. I made Christy watch me on my cell phone. We got one together.
Like that, I get props for for an assist
You did.
when I
You brought
didn't
the
do
good
anything, but
energy.
sure.
Anyway, here's the thing. They're starting to arrive to my home in LA. I'm not there right now, but they're starting to arrive.
Oh.
and I sent a frantic and frazzled text message just not that long ago where I was like, um, to a friend of the podcast who Leslie Seiler's husband, who's at my house right now, and I was like, "Can you please make sure that the packages that were just delivered get brought inside the house? They're very valuable." He was like, "No problem." And then I was like, "I'll be honest, they're labubus." But this is the thing. I mean, they are a high ticket item.
They
They're,
are.
did you know in England they've stopped allowing them to be sold because of all of the fist fights that were breaking out?
This is insane. I've heard of people like stealing them off people
Yeah.
when you're just like out and about. Um, I do have right next to my computer a note that says Labubu Friday, June 20th at 9:11 a.m. That was the very first text message I received from you about Labubus. We had never spoken of them
Not once.
prior to that. We've seen them for ages, like
Yeah.
for weeks, just their little faces all over the place. But we've never spoken about them. And that was the first message. And then it just spiraled from there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier.
Yep. Listen, here's the thing. I had been looking into the resale ones. It's preposterous the amount of money. These at least I'm
Oh,
getting face value. And there's something about that for me that makes me feel like I've really accomplished something.
hey,
Yeah,
that's something.
I'm a mess.
Look, and the joke is since we've talked about it, um, when I go on to like Facebook Marketplace, all these Labubus, that's all people are selling. And I'm just like, so my phone is absolutely listening to me.
Yeah.
I know
You
that it is, but it's just now they're everywhere. And I
and you
get
got to
it.
be careful because some of them are fake.
Oh yeah, I could never. I'm terrified to even look at one in person
Yeah.
because I'm like, how? I know you can tell from like a stamp on their foot or something.
Hmm.
But I'm also like, I don't know. How do you know from the outside of the box that it's legit?
You don't. Well,
Mm,
there's some tells.
see, and
There's
here's
some
the
tells.
joke of my life. I I didn't get Laboo bit. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
not. I didn't. If I never get one, that's okay.
Hmm.
I didn't.
Well, buckle up because you might get one in the mail, which is one of my doubles.
Of
You know
course
what? I
I
had
will.
this thought the other day though, because they are a blind box item, and I do two of the ones that are coming to me are doubles. And I know what you're thinking. How do you know that, Lauren? Well, part of the system, which again, I don't want to bore people with, but part of it is like you open it virtually and it shows you
Right.
online what you got so you know what's coming.
Sure.
Um, I had this thought the other day in earnest. I was like, ah, I've almost got the full set. Swore to God I didn't want a full set of them.
Oh, I believe that second
That,
text message that I received from you was,
yep.
I just want one.
I want one. I'm like, the one that's meant to find me will find me. That
Hmm.
will be my labubu that's like meant to be. No, no.
Hmm.
Now I'm in it. I'm in it chest deep. Not even knee deep. I'm in it chest deep. But I do have a couple that are coming are doubles. And I thought to myself the other day, well, what if I can't even get this. It's going to be hard to even say this without laughing.
I said rump. You can get away with anything at
You're
this
right.
point.
Well, rest your rump and listen to this. I was like, maybe I keep the full set pristine in the house and then the double is what I put on my bag.
That makes
Lauren.
sense to me.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
oh, Lauren, because I'm like, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I'm like I don't want. Yeah, I'm like what am I going to do? Like first of all, how am I going to tell the rest of them, "Sorry, I'm choosing this one to take on my purse."
Hmm.
Then the rest of them are heartbroken. That's the first thing. Second thing, what if it gets dirty? What if something gets spilled on it? What if, God forbid, it gets stolen?
Um, couple of things. One, you are the cutest human alive. Just know that. Toy Story really got to you,
Yeah.
and I love it. Two, have you seen? You can get like the Labubu shaped clear case that they go in to go on the purse.
And then you know what I think when I look at that? How can they breathe? They're claustrophobic. How is it? It's like they're
Oh,
Hannibal Lecter. What? I'm encasing them. I hear myself. I know.
now you can go back to Lauren.
Lauren, I know.
There it is. Oh boy. Okay.
No,
Okay.
I'm not opposed to the clear case. I'm not opposed to it.
Sure.
But then I'm like, do I just want to let its fur fly? You know what I mean? Like, do I want to let the labubu labubu?
Labubi. No. I
Let the
tried so
labubu la libu. Oh, it's not my finest work.
let the labubu live, love, and laugh. Boo. Yeah, I get it.
Live, laugh, labubu.
That should absolutely be a shirt that
Yeah,
you own
I'm writing it down.
because
I'm writing it down.
you do you this whole thing has become like out of nowhere
Yeah,
because they were a thing I saw like once and then all of a sudden it's everywhere.
yeah. I know.
They get little hats and
Oh yeah, there's a whole
hooves
world
and
now. You can get clothing. I know people are saying this is like the new Beanie Babies phase, and I don't think that
oh,
that's untrue.
I just like a year from now at garage sales, are there going to be piles of Labubus?
It's possible.
Hmm.
Did you ever see the footage or the still photograph of the couple going through a divorce during the height of the Beanie Baby craze? And
Yes.
they were literally
Hands and
sorting
knees.
them in the on the floor in the courtroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that burned in my brain from the moment I
And you know,
saw it.
the thing for me about that was like, how did that go? Like, what was the lead up for them? Was one of them like, here's what we need to invest our money in? Beanie Babies. Like, was it that where it was like, this is an investment in our future? And so, therefore, when they divorced, it was like, okay, we have to very seriously split these up between us. Or was it that one of them was a collector? And then in the divorce, the other was like, well, I'm owed half of that. Like, I just got defensive
Mm-hmm.
for the collector. I don't even know if there is one. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean?
What I'm hearing is we need to look into that. We need to see if we can find out more about that couple. I just always
Yeah.
assumed, based on nothing, that they were both like hardcore collectors and this was something they did together. And then something happened and they were divorcing. And because it was like the pile were on the floor,
Yeah.
it was like someone took a box and just dumped them. Although I'm sure it was probably they were shoved in garbage bags and then just dumped on the floor. Um, I feel like this couple pushed that judge. And I feel like it was like they weren't agreeing to anything. It was
Yeah.
dragging out for this, like what should have been simple divorce. And I feel like the judge, again, I have no reason for feeling this. I felt the judge was like, over toys? Get bent. And then they were like, bring them in. Go ahead. Do it now.
Well,
Because
I
he
think that
can't trust them to do
yeah,
it
that was
alone.
a part of it for me was like, you know, not that I'm a huge collector of things. You're more of a collector than me in general, but I'm like, I wouldn't want anything I was collecting to touch the ground.
Oh, I would have been livid, especially if you're purchasing them specifically for like their value or the value that they estimated what they would be, which bless that. Um, but yeah, oh, I would be pissed to see it like dumped on the ground in a pile.
Yeah.
I, we would have been there forever
Oh
to
yeah.
go through them. And also, how do you know like who you're grabbing? Like, obviously, you grab the little purple platypus first,
Of course.
obviously. But
We
then
all
after
would.
that, it's like, then what do you do? I guess the Princess Di Bear. And then what? Like, what's your list? Like, did you
What I'm
know?
hearing is that you may have part of a list already in your mind.
I might, but I like that I'm going to. Can I get away with just Beanie Baby divorce couple? Because I
Mm,
have to believe that somebody knows who they are. Um, I mean, just to be clear, I mean, I wonder if that'll let me. I did just find that on the internet.
that's the image. She'll post that in the case file,
I
folks. I mean,
will.
you're gonna
I
have
will.
to.
The joke is, I remember them both just like hands and knees, but they're just more of a crouch position.
I like though, like my question is like, who was the photographer that took that photo? Like, were there multiple photos of it? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, there are so many questions that need to get answered. I'm just verifying that it's saved. It did.
I also
Um,
like to write a story. And in that
yes,
story, I'm like, that woman looks like a businesswoman, and that man looks like he's
Radio
running his.
Shack. No?
She went there, so I didn't have to, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a look to him, and I'm just like, oh, they were never meant to be. I'm writing a story. They could have been a great couple for a certain amount of time, but I'm just like,
Well,
oh no, he was intimidated by her success, and she was off put by his building of computers.
the joke is there are so many people who are like, I would be very interested in a where are they now segment on this couple. I want,
See?
I have so many questions. Because it says this is in 1999.
Wow.
Also, what I'm noticing is one of them doesn't have a lawyer because
Well,
in the photo,
you think that man isn't trying to represent himself?
oh, I think he definitely, that chair is askew, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
because he got up to get to this, and she very clearly brought her lawyer. But I'm also like, okay, is is this the day they're just sorting the Beanie Babies? There are people in the crowd. Is this like in the sitting in the stands? Not the stands. It's not a sport. Maybe it is. But I just want to know about this couple.
Yeah.
And I want to know, are there more photos? Is that the only photo? Oh my God. You'll never guess where the photo was taken. Obviously, I'm meaning like city, where
Boise.
Vegas.
Oh,
This is
okay.
claiming 1999 uh divorced couple. A loss. Oh, okay, here we go. Fuck yeah. Okay. This is from I'm so jazzed. This is from an
She's feeling
Instagram
hot,
account
folks.
called Blowing Fact. Um, I don't know if it's true, but it says in 1999, a Las Vegas court witnessed an unusual scene during a divorce case, a couple dividing their Beanie Baby collection under judicial supervision. Valued between 2,500 and 5,000, Francis and Harold Mountain could not agree on how to split the collection themselves, even after being divorced for 4 months. The collection was laid out on the courtroom floor, and under the supervision of family court Judge Hardcastle, the ex-spouses took turns selecting Beanie Babies one by one. We have some facts we can look into, so I'm happy about that. There's also a picture where he's like selecting, and it got put in a newspaper because while I was reading that, it kept flipping the photo to different photos. There we go. They like took another photo. He's so into it, and she looks exhausted. She looks
Yeah.
just done, but oh,
Well, I'm
this
looking them
is,
up.
well, thank God. I can't wait. I have so many questions. I just want to know. There was snickering among the 5 or 6 people in the gallery. Gallery, not the stands, Christy. Gallery. Um, she wasn't happy about it. I don't agree with the judge's decision to do this. She said it's ridiculous and embarrassing.
Well, then why didn't you just let it go?
I don't know. I feel like in the moment she was like, I'm not letting him have them, and then suddenly was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I feel like when you find yourself sitting on the floor of a courtroom, fingering through a pile of Beanie Babies that you think are worth more money than we all know that
Oh,
they were never worth. I do feel like there must be one of those moments where it's like, what am I doing? This is the Lauren Ash. It's that moment.
yes.
Like, what are you doing?
Oh, 100%. My question is in the land of Beanie Babies,
Yeah.
Did any of them actually hit the value that the Beanie Baby book claimed they were going to get to?
Now, you mean in general, or do you mean in terms of Francis and Harold's?
Oh, I mean in general, but
I don't
Francis
think
and Harold
any
will
of
live in
them
my soul
did.
forever.
I could be wrong, but I don't think any Babies reached what they said that they were going to.
Interesting. I mean, I had a handful of them throughout my life.
Yeah.
Um, the platypus was always one that I deeply coveted. Um, but I was not like crazy about them. I was not like I have to have every single one. I
Yeah.
was just like they're okay. But the platypus and Princess Di one were the only ones I can think of, which is why
Hmm.
I mentioned them when I did. I also want to know, Francis and Harold, did you ever reunite? Did you remarry? Did you keep collecting these? Did you collect something else?
It's a documentary, I think, that's waiting to happen. People want to know.
Yes. Oh, we
Yeah.
have to know.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's call Netflix. We got a show.
And we've got a couple of hosts that would love to do it. I almost said you could pay me in Beanie Babies, but then I was like, but I don't want them. Stop it. Stop trying to take just merch, Christy, as a price. Like,
We
you
started
can
this
take
show
money.
five years ago where you were begging brands and businesses to send you hats.
Yeah.
And what I love is that I think we only ever got one.
Yeah.
But we've gotten so much more since then. So I think if I've learned anything, aim high.
Now, I don't want to crush our souls. There is a 2021 documentary, Mania.
Sounds like maybe we need to cover that on the show.
I'm not gonna
Was there
lie, I would love that.
is there a crime element?
I don't know. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Maybe even if there's not, we just go for it. It features interviews with passionate collectors, notable influencers, and company insiders of Beanie Babies, the stuffed toys created by Ty Warner that spawned a frenzy of American greed.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hate it.
Listen, let's put it on the list.
Shit, I'm writing it down.
Listen, it feels honest to us.
Yes. Oh, I think the more passionate we are about it, the more people are going to be into it.
It's always the way. What you drinking over there?
Oh, I'm doing a strawberry lemonade
Oh,
because
one of your Wendy's drinks.
yeah, I only had so much time leading up to this, and I was like, oh, 7-Eleven's not that far, but we're currently in the middle of a what we call sidewalk days, so most of our main street is blocked off and you can't drive down it, so you have to take a whole bunch of detours to get to 7-Eleven, which would just add so much time, and I was like, I'll do Wendy's today and we'll just move on. I don't know why I always feel the need to justify, but there it is.
You don't need to justify anything. I'm only having a water. Now, did I go to a happy hour before this with friend of the podcast, Aaron Conway? Yes, I did. I had a couple glasses of wine, but I
Good
feel
for you.
fine, folks.
Again, you don't have to justify
I
it
don't have to
either.
justify anything. You're
We need
right.
to learn. If there's a question, this is the answer,
Yeah. And
and
I think
you
that
sit in it.
the thing that's funny about the dichotomy of you and I is that you feel you need to justify not drinking, and I feel I need to justify that I'm not that drunk. So that speaks volumes about both of us.
It really does.
Yeah.
We're really a yin and yang sort of
Oh,
situation.
what a gift. Well, listen, let's get into it. We're, of course, discussing the Brenda Schaefer case on this episode of the show. I am unfamiliar, but let's get up to date with this little synopsis right now. In September 1988, Brenda Schaefer's car was found abandoned on the side of the road in Louisville, Kentucky. Despite multiple searches, police were unable to find any sign of her. When police spoke with Brenda's family and friends, they were all convinced that Brenda's fiance Mel was responsible for her disappearance. And when police spoke with Mel themselves, They were so convinced that Mel was involved that they went above and beyond to seek justice. So, what happened to Brenda Schaefer? Just how shitty of a human was her fiance? And did police ever get the justice they were looking for? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
Spoiler alert, I'm going to get mad at a man.
Oh, you know what I like is I can set my watch by it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll say it. I think by the end of this, everyone will agree it's
Totally.
warranted. This one also comes with a heavy disclaimer.
Oh,
This episode will get dark. So this episode will contain mentions of rape and graphic sexual references. I have kept a lot of the worst details out of the episode. Um, but there may be some things that listeners find disturbing, so trigger warning for those who need it. So, John Schaefer was born in November 1913 in St. Matthews, Kentucky. 2 years later, Mary Downs, known as Essie, was born in Marion, Kentucky. The couple married in 1937 and had 6 children. They had a daughter, Carolyn, in 1939. They fostered a 9-year-old girl, Marianne, in 1942, had a son, John Jr., known as Jack, in 1943, a son, Tom, in 1945, a son, Mike, in 1948, and a daughter, Brenda, in 1952. Sadly, in 1971, Jack, who was a police officer, was killed on duty. Around 10:30 p.m. on May 2nd, Jack and his partner Wilbur Hayes noticed 3 young men standing in an alley. The men were later identified as 22-year-old Narvel Tinsley Jr., 17-year-old Michael Tinsley, and 16-year-old David White. Wilbur asked what the 3 were doing, and when Narvel made like a really snarky comment, Wilbur got out of the car and asked him for ID. When Narvel said it was none of Wilbur's business, Wilbur grabbed Narvel and pushed him against the police car, holding one of Narvel's arms behind his back. Narvel's brother Michael grabbed a handgun that was concealed nearby and shot Wilbur once in the head and twice in the back. Hearing the gunfire, Jack ran around the side of the vehicle when Narvel pulled out his own gun and shot Jack 3 times in the back and twice in the head. The 3 men fled the scene, and a man who lived nearby, who was seemingly not involved in the crime in any way, put Wilbur's body in the back of the police car and then drove it a few blocks away and left it abandoned. And then he moved Jack's body to conceal it from the street. The police car was found around 6:30 a.m. despite the officers failing to respond to 11 radio calls in the span of 5 hours. No one ever thought to search for them. Both officers died from their injuries. Wilbur Hayes was 26 and Jack Schaefer was 28. 4 days later, police found Narvel and Michael hiding in a railroad inspection tunnel. Both were arrested and charged with murder. Narvel was eventually convicted of the murder of Jack Schaefer. Michael was convicted of the murder of Wilbur Hayes. They were both sentenced to death, but later had their sentences commuted to life in prison, and both have since been released. And if Jack's death wasn't enough tragedy for the Schaefer family, 17 years later, they suffered the loss of the youngest Schaefer child. Brenda Sue Schaefer was born April 25th, 1952, in Louisville, Kentucky. The summer she turned 16, Brenda met 19-year-old Charles Van Pelt, who went by Pete. He worked as a dispatcher for the Louisville Police Department. 3 years later, the couple planned to get married following Brenda's high school graduation. But after the sudden death of her brother Jack just a few months prior, the wedding got postponed to December. And unfortunately, Brenda and Pete seemed to fight a lot, especially over money, and they separated 4 years later. The divorce was finalized in March 1976. 2 years later, Brenda met a dentist named Jim Rush. The couple remained together for 8 years until their breakup in mid 1986. And she said she was concerned about his excessive drinking and she felt he was taking her for granted. Brenda got a job as an assistant at a doctor's office, and in September 1986, Brenda's best friend Joyce set Brenda up on a blind date with a friend of the man that Joyce was seeing. The date was 48-year-old Mel Ignato. Brenda was 34 at the time, and since she was a consenting adult, I don't give a shit about the age difference. It's a gap, but her frontal lobe is fully there.
Yes.
I'm okay with it. Mel immediately just started showering Brenda with gifts like jewelry and fur coats. And on Christmas, just 3 months into their relationship, Mel proposed with a $20,000 ring.
Whoa.
Brenda said it was too soon, but she said this wasn't a no, it was just a not right now. Brenda eventually accepted the ring, and the couple were officially engaged 2 months later on Valentine's Day. But by December 1987, Brenda was telling friends she had grown afraid of Mel. He stopped letting her go out alone. He called her 2 to 3 times every day while she was at work. And when he was working overseas, he would prearrange times to call and demand that Brenda be available. She said that his temper flared when they were in private, and he was known to explode, was the specific term used, uh, when Brenda would simply not rip the toilet paper evenly across.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Anytime she mentioned a breakup, Mel would scream and cry and then guilt trip her into staying. On September 24th, 1988, Brenda met with Mel for a date. At the time, Brenda had her own condo, but she had recently moved in with her parents to help care for her mother, Essie, who'd been diagnosed with lupus. So when Brenda didn't arrive home by 3:30 a.m., Essie grew concerned. She called Mel, who told her Brenda left his place in Jeffersontown at 11:30 p.m. And since the drive between the two houses would only take like 15 minutes, Essie was even more concerned that her daughter hadn't arrived. But Essie knew that Brenda was having doubts about her relationship with Mel, and since Essie wasn't exactly a fan of Mel's, she kind of hoped that maybe her daughter had gone off with someone else. So in that moment, Essie thought, like, oh, I wonder if maybe she's out with another man. So to cover for her daughter, just in case, Essie suddenly said, you know what? She's probably with a relative. Shout out to this woman for just immediately having her daughter's back, no questions asked. I mean, that's dedication. So Mel then asked Essie, well, call the relative, find out for sure, and then call me back. Well, again, Essie didn't really like Mel, so she didn't call him back. Half an hour later, Mel called her, and Essie said, oh, yeah, I talked to the relative. Brenda's definitely there. Don't worry. So then Mel called the relative himself, which then do that from the start. Don't play these games, but whatever. He calls the relative. The relative's like, I haven't seen Brenda. So at 4:17 a.m., Mel called 911 crying. He said, quote, I don't know if I've got a problem here or not. I've got a person who's missing or seems to be missing. The operator told him to call the police. At 4:30 a.m., Essie called Jim Rush, Brenda's ex-boyfriend, and she told him Brenda was missing. Well, Jim immediately got up and drove around for an hour looking for Brenda. He mainly focused on the area near Mel's house because nobody liked or trusted this man. At 6:08 a.m., police found Brenda's 1984 Buick Regal abandoned on Interstate 64 in St. Matthews, Kentucky. While there was still 3/4 of a tank of gas, the rear passenger tire was flat. The car had been broken into and ransacked. There were papers scattered on the road and on the floor of the car. The stereo was missing, and it appeared as though someone had tried to pry open the trunk. Since the vehicle was registered to Brenda, police went to her parents' house at 6:39 a.m. and Essie officially filed a missing persons report. Essie mentioned that Brenda had not returned home the night before following a date with her fiance, and that she was last seen wearing roughly $30,000 worth of jewelry, which included two diamond rings, a diamond bracelet, a gold bracelet, and a gold necklace. Friends and family said Brenda wasn't happy with Mel and she had plans to break things off with him. So, police, of course, were very interested to speak with Mel, especially because, he was the last person known to see her. Mel said they did have a date the night before, and while he usually drove, he was having problems with one of the tires on his car, so Brenda had to drive. It's interesting that Mel supposedly had a problem with his car to the point where he couldn't drive on their date. And yet, when Brenda was first reported missing, Mel drove his car to the Schaefer's house. I guess suddenly there was no problem with that tire after all.
Right.
It's also interesting to note that Mel had that car serviced by a mechanic on September 17th. And not only did Mel not mention any tire issue, the mechanic also didn't note one either. And
Hmm.
she went missing on the 24th. Um, and since we're already skeptical of Mel, I also want to point out while he was at the Schaefer's house, Mel immediately asked to be alone in Brenda's room because he felt that would allow him to pick up some vibrations on where she might be. It's just the man doesn't scream trustworthy to me, but you know.
No.
So Mel tells police Brenda arrived at his house around 3:30 p.m. They had no specific plans, so they just kind of drove around. They attended a boat show at Harrods Creek Landing, but the weather was so bad they didn't even get out of the car. Mel said that while they drove, Brenda told him she was depressed and she was worried about her mother's health and she was tired from working too much. Which, sounds like a textbook case of someone trying to give police a motive as to why a person might suddenly disappear of their own volition. While talking to police, Mel repeatedly stopped his story to ask about Brenda's car. Had the police found it? What condition was it in when you found it? Just like incredibly suspicious questions. The police decided to lie to him and say they hadn't found the car yet. They would then push Mel to continue his story because they want to know, lock him into something. When was the last time you saw her? Um, and they noted that Mel seemed really frustrated that they wouldn't let him lead the interview. Mel then gave a very long, very detailed list of all the places they went to that night. After Harrods Creek Landing, they went to an art fair in Prospect. But again, the rain was so bad they didn't even get out of the car. They drove around a random housing development before heading to Louisville and going to the Oxmoor shopping center. They arrived at 6:30 p.m. and walked around the center until 9. They bought nothing. They drove to a restaurant called Captain's Quarters, but instead of going inside, chose to just stand outside and look out at the water. Brenda said she wanted to go see the Falls Fountain, which is a landmark anchored off the shore of downtown Louisville, or it was. I think they got rid of it the late 90s. Um, but halfway there, Mel said Brenda changed her mind, and instead they just decided to go to the Stony Brook Shopping Center to do more window shopping. Again, they purchased nothing. Mel said that Brenda dropped him off at home at 11:30 p.m. When he got inside, he called upstairs to his mother to say that Brenda had just dropped him off. Then he sat down and read the newspaper and went through his mail. Around midnight, he got hungry, so he went to the fridge but didn't find anything exciting. So he drove to a restaurant called Skyline Chili, using the car with the bad tire.
Mm.
He said he ordered spaghetti, chili, and a soft drink. He complained to a waiter about the size of the drink and left around 1:30 a.m. The assistant manager confirmed that yes, Mel was there at that time. Mel said he went home and went to sleep until Essie called him 2 hours later. Now, I don't know about you, but this entire story is incredibly suspicious. Randomly driving around in the rain. Okay, I could maybe buy that. Window shopping for 5 hours sounds like you're looking for an excuse as to why no one would remember seeing you and why you had no receipts to prove you were actually there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you stopped at a restaurant during an 8 hour date and didn't get anything to eat? What's up with that? It's almost like he's lying, but he knows he can't say they had dinner because no one would confirm they were there. And then you get home following the date. You don't just say, I'm home. You specifically say, Brenda dropped me off. I mean, you only say that if you want your mother to tell the police Brenda was there, even though she didn't physically see her. Police spoke to people at the various businesses that Mel claimed he went to with Brenda. No one saw them. However, weirdly enough, a waitress at Pitt's Smokehouse and Grill in Prospect was convinced that Mel and Brenda were there from 6 to 9 p.m. But according to Mel's story, at that time, he and Brenda were at the Oxmoor shopping center 8 miles away. And then a waitress at a bar who knew Mel and Brenda personally claimed she saw them around 10 p.m. She said she was leaving that night around 1 when she saw Brenda alone in the parking lot. The lot is within walking distance of the place where Brenda's car was found the following morning, but there was no sign that Brenda may have been there. When Brenda's car was checked, the only problem was that rear passenger tire. Investigators found a nail inside the tire. And if you're like, oh, yeah, people drive over nails all the time. Um, okay, it was a typical drywall nail, but there was no evidence that nail had ever touched the road surface. And
That's interesting.
there was also no evidence that it had ever been struck by a hammer at all. It was just a random, brand new nail, never touched by anything somehow in the tire. But despite the possibility of Brenda, disappearing following car trouble, police were just immediately convinced that Mel was responsible. They did not buy his bullshit story. So we're going to look closer at Mel's background so everyone can get a better understanding as to why nobody likes this man. Ah, Melvin Henry Ignato was born March 26, 1938, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was the second of three children, and the family moved to Louisville in the early 40s. Mel went to the University of Louisville, where he maintained a C average. He didn't declare a major, and in the end, didn't graduate. No judgment there because, I mean, university is not for everyone. Uh, his main interest while at university was joining the fraternity Sigma Alpha Mu. In 1959, Mel was gifted one of the fraternity's paddles, which he hung on his wall at home as just decor for decades.
Hmm.
Soon, Mel quit college and met a girl named Sharon Kippen. The couple were married shortly after in May 1960. They had three children, including daughters Donna and Patty, and son Michael. Unfortunately, the marriage had a lot of problems. Sharon said if anything went wrong at home, Mel told her she needed to be punished. Well, what did Mel consider wrong? Anytime they argued, especially when they argued about money or when Sharon failed to return home on time. She's an adult. She doesn't have a curfew. Um, but most importantly, what was Mel's idea of punishment? Anal sex.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He wanted it, she didn't, so he turned it into we have to as your punishment.
Oh God.
It didn't take us long to get to why everybody doesn't like him.
Yeah, we've gotten there pretty quickly.
Mhm,
Jesus.
mhm. To be clear, I am not sex shaming this man in any way. If you want to do sex any way you want to, as long as your partner is consenting, have at it.
Yeah.
As long as
But
your partner is consenting and of legal age.
yes.
There we go.
And again, using any sex act as a punishment because you know the person doesn't like it is exceptionally dark.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this man is a real piece of shit. Another story about Mel from Sharon. He was a salesman. He was often away from work. Once he faked a week-long business trip to Florida. He even went so far as to have postcards sent home from a Florida hotel. But when he was supposedly away, friends caught him in Louisville. He was literally just having a staycay on his own. When asked about it, he said he just needed time alone. As an apology, Mel gave Sharon a 2 carat diamond ring. She accidentally dropped it and the diamond cracked, so she took it to a jeweler who said it's not a real diamond, it was a paste diamond, meaning made of glass.
Oh boy.
Uh-huh. So Mel and Sharon separated in March 1973, and their divorce was finalized in August. And somehow, Mel not only got full custody of their children, he also got the house and pretty much everything in it. Sharon was given her own car and a color TV.
Mm.
I am never going to understand why things worked out so well in Mel's favor. Sharon described Mel as manipulative, self centered, dominating, and cocky. She said Mel constantly belittled her in front of other people, and he considered himself to be superior to everyone else. After their divorce, Mel was a regular at happy hours. He even once went to a party with a penis shaped lollipop where he would walk up to women and ask them to lick his dick. He was in his late 30s at the time.
Oh boy.
Yep. Around 1964, Mel got a job as a salesman for an import-export company called Rosalco. During his divorce from Sharon, the company hired a secretary named Mary Ann Shore. At the time, Mary Ann was 23, Mel was 35. They started a relationship the following year, and it lasted a decade. Marianne never kept a job for long. Employers said she was unreliable and noted that items always seemed to go missing whenever Marianne was working. Um, when I say items, they described things like money, camera, jewelry, food, bathroom cleaners. I don't know. Uh, when things didn't work out for her at Rosalco, Mel hired Marianne as his live-in babysitter because he had full custody of his kids and he was often away on business, sometimes for up to 6 weeks at a time. But when Marianne was left with the children, she refused to cook or clean. She made the kids do it because she said her only job was to watch the kids. As a mother, watching includes feeding.
Yeah.
Watching does not mean just looking at them. You have to care for them. Ah. After 10 years, Marianne realized Mel was never going to propose to her. So she broke up with him in 1984. And then, just as an added fuck you to him, Marianne anonymously reported Mel to the IRS for tax evasion. Which is a level of petty I almost appreciate.
I was just gonna say.
On his tax returns in 1979 and 1980, Mel claimed he made $8,000 less than he actually did. 8,000 then is equivalent to like 35,000 in 2025.
Right.
And when Marianne ratted him out, Mel was charged with 2 counts of willful evasion of income tax. He pleaded guilty to both counts in November 1984 and was fined $2,500, ordered to pay $11,000 in restitution, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. However, for some reason, he only served 30 days. Most people who knew Mel didn't even know he went to prison because he told them he was just visiting family out of state. The report from the prison psychologist said Mel suffered from anxiety, depression, and passive aggressive personality structure. Mel started dating Brenda in September 1986. The following year, he was pushed out of his job at Rosalco after 23 years. 2 months later, in February 1987, Mel briefly moved to Boca Raton to attempt a real estate career. Before returning to Louisville a few months later, he got a job selling water softener equipment. Mel and Brenda got engaged in February 1987, but by December, Brenda was telling people close to her Mel had become more possessive and more sexually demanding. His sexual requests had become more exotic, and simply put, Brenda was not interested. What was he specifically asking for? You're going to be shocked. Anal sex and group sex. But Brenda continued to say no, as is her right. But when police asked Mel about the relationship, he said they were happy. Police were very skeptical because, according to Brenda's ex, Jim Rush, Brenda called him on September 21st, just 4 days before she disappeared. Brenda told him she had broken up with Mel and she was meeting him on the weekend to return his stuff. She asked Jim to meet her for a drink. He was unavailable, so they made plans for the following week. So I don't know that I'd say that sounds like things were going well.
Yeah.
And when Brenda didn't show up to work on Monday, the FBI was called in for assistance. Police received a tip from Mel's hairdresser that Mel had been having an affair with his ex-lover, Marianne Shore. Police looked into Marianne and found she only had a criminal record of writing two bad checks in August 1981. Since both checks were under $100, the cases had been dismissed. When police spoke to Marianne about Mel, she said they hadn't spoken in months, but she said he was never violent with her and he was never possessive. So she doesn't know what people are talking about when they were saying anything negative about Mel. Mel's mother, Virginia, said that Mel arrived home at 11:30 on the night of Brenda's disappearance. She said he called upstairs to her to say that he was home and that Brenda had dropped him off. Mel and his mother bought a house together in 1984, and he'd been living with her ever since. I don't know if it was like he lives with his mother or they just live together kind of a thing. I had a teacher in high school that his elderly mother moved in with him, and he was very clear, my mother lives with me, not the other way around. So I don't know if it bothered Mel or not, but I'll be honest, I hope it did.
Yeah.
Uh, Even though both Mel and his mother claimed that Brenda dropped Mel off that night, the police refused to believe it. And not just because, statistically speaking, intimate partners tend to be responsible for crimes like this, but also because police learned that Mel, was a shitty person. A few examples for you. Mel often complained to other people that Brenda wasn't adventurous enough sexually. And no matter what Mel would suggest to spice things up, Brenda wasn't interested. And to that I say, if you and your partner aren't sexually compatible, it's okay to break up. It's okay to have your own interests and just part ways. Um, but there's also pushing somebody to do things they don't want to do. That's healthy. But Mel just wouldn't drop it. He tried to push Brenda to take various drugs like marijuana and cocaine because he thought that would help loosen her up. Brenda refused. At one point, Mel forced Brenda to take some unknown pills that he simply called sex tablets. Brenda said she took the pills after Mel told her, quote, I can get this pill in you somehow if I want to.
Good Lord.
Brenda told friends after taking the pills, she passed out and woke up naked. While she was unconscious, Mel had stripped Brenda and taken nude photos of her.
Ugh.
And if this isn't all horrifying enough, there was an incident during an out of state getaway. Mel and Brenda went to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is 432 miles east of Memphis. Memphis, of course, the birthplace of Lisa Marie Presley, who was not only the daughter of Elvis, but also briefly the wife of Nicolas Cage. That's three. That's three Nicolas Cage references in a row. That's as organic as I can make it.
3 episodes in a row.
Three episodes in a row.
Yep.
Yeah. Unnecessary.
I love it.
I like the challenge of it, but still. So Brenda and Mel go to Gatlinburg, and one morning Brenda wakes up with a stinging sensation in her nose and throat, and Mel is holding a cloth with chloroform over her face.
Oh my God.
When Brenda startled and was like, "What are you doing?" Mel said, "It's just something to help you sleep." When she pointed out she didn't need help because she was already sleeping, he just didn't seem to have an answer for that. Brenda packed her bags and planned to leave, but she wasn't able to get a flight home. Mel apologized, and Brenda ended up staying for the rest of the trip. Mel openly used chloroform on Brenda when she was sleeping. Um, so it's not exactly a surprise that police were convinced Mel was responsible for Brenda's disappearance. Unfortunately, they didn't have any evidence tying him to the potential crime, and they didn't have any evidence that a crime had actually been committed. Police searched the 550-acre park near where Brenda's car was found. They searched the Ohio River because Mel owned a boat. Absolutely no sign of Brenda. Desperate for answers, police consulted with psychics. One said Brenda's body was in a 55-gallon drum, quote, somewhere wet. And while a drum was found near water, it was empty. Another psychic claimed that Brenda had been abducted by two men who were hiding in the backseat of her car. Police weren't able to find any evidence to support that. But no matter how many theories they were told about Brenda's disappearance, police fully believed that Mel was responsible. When they looked into him, they discovered Mel traveled to Hong Kong a lot for work. Um, and there were rumors that Mel was responsible for a sex crime in Hong Kong. However, there was no official evidence. Police then asked Brenda's brother Tom to meet with Mel while wearing a wire. And since Brenda's family also believed that Mel was responsible, Tom absolutely agreed. Police said, say whatever comes to mind, anything to get a reaction. So on October 3rd, 9 days after Brenda was last seen, Tom met up with Mel while wearing a wire. They had some random chit chat, and then Brenda's name came up. Well, Mel immediately pulled out an itemized list of Brenda's possessions. Mel claimed he and Brenda compiled the list together, even though it was all written in Mel's handwriting. The list included 42 items, such as Brenda's car, her condo, jewelry, furniture, that sort of thing. Each item included its appraised value. The list also included the exact amount of money that was in Brenda's bank account and the exact amount owing on her credit card. Mel claimed that they had made the list together and that Brenda had given him instructions as to who should get each item if something were to happen to her. I'm all for being prepared, but do we believe this? We don't. Not to mention, she's been missing for 9 days, and you want to divvy up her possessions? It just feels insane to me. If someone I love was missing for 9 days and people were like, we got to talk about the possibility they're dead, I'm going to punch them in the face.
Yeah.
Mel claimed Brenda wanted her money, her condo, and her car to go to her mother, but she wanted any jewelry and gifts to go to Mel. And he said he knew that Brenda was wearing a lot of that jewelry when she went missing. So he said if the jewelry can't be recovered, he'd just take the insurance money instead.
Mm,
I mean, I don't. There just aren't words. What an absolute piece of shit. Then he asked Tom to give him any cards or letters of his that Brenda may have kept, and he'd like any old photos of Brenda, especially ones with Brenda in cutoff shorts. He's vile. He is a,
That's too much. This woman has gone missing.
yep,
I
just such a piece of shit. Tom recorded 3 different meetings with Mel over the span of 5 weeks, but unfortunately, nothing was ever said that police could use. And if trying to hand out Brenda's possessions less than 2 weeks after her disappearance wasn't suspicious enough, um, how about the fact that 6 weeks after she disappeared, he started dating someone else? Mel then applied for a job at American Family Life Insurance. During the interview, the owners mentioned Brenda and Mel because both had been mentioned in the newspaper. And Mel told them he was a gourmet cook and he had prepared a meal for Brenda on the day she went missing. He added that he spent a quiet night at his house with Brenda and his mother, and Brenda left at 11:30. He said when he learned that Brenda was missing, he immediately went out with Brenda's brother Tom to go look for her. So we know that's all just a piece of shit. That's all he's lying. I don't even
yes.
believe that he can cook. But the insurance company felt sorry for Mel and they hired him anyway. Well, he ended up quitting 2 months later, having sold 0 insurance policies. In February 1989, Mel started dating another woman, this time 45-year-old Barbara McGee, who dated Mel 3 years earlier, but they had broken up because she felt he was too pushy about sex. And that, dear people, is what we call a pattern. Mel and Barbara reunited in February and then broke up 5 months later. In March 1989, Mel received a letter postmarked from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In it, the letter's author claimed to have hired a Cuban gang who would execute Mel if he didn't reveal the location of Brenda's body. The author turned out to be Brenda's boss, Dr. William Spaulding, who fully believed Mel was responsible for Brenda's disappearance. He said he hoped the letter would provoke Mel to admit to what happened to Brenda. But in the end, William was charged with making terroristic threats and convicted of a misdemeanor. He was fined $300. In October 1989, police suggested that Mel testify before a grand jury to clear his name. But honestly, they were kind of hoping he would say something wrong and then just kind of bury himself on the stand. Well, Mel testified for 4 hours and he held his ground and he kept saying he had nothing to do with Brenda's disappearance. He was asked about that trip to Tennessee where he held the chloroformed cloth over Brenda's face. And Mel said, "Oh, that was just a misunderstanding. He has bad allergies, so he often took Kleenex to bed with him." Well, that doesn't explain the chloroform or why the cloth was on her face.
Yeah.
But okay. When outright asked if he killed Brenda, Mel said, quote, "No, absolutely not. I did not kill her. I would not have laid a finger on that woman." Don't love that woman. But
Mm.
following the hearing, Mel and his lawyer held a press conference where they stated they hoped Mel's testimony would redirect the police department's efforts to find Brenda. Mel said, "This has certainly been a nightmare for me." Really? I mean, in the few months she's been missing, you've already dated 2 different women. I don't know how much of a nightmare that is. So in late 1989, Mel was feeling pretty good about himself. He joined the Southeast Christian Church. He became active in its singles group. He was living his best life. He told one woman, quote, "If Christ has forgiven me my sins and cast them into a sea of forgiveness, why wouldn't the state do the same?" When the woman questioned what Mel was talking about, he said, quote, "For example, if I killed Brenda, why should I have to answer to the state if God has forgiven me?" So at this point, it feels like Brenda was likely murdered and that Mel was likely responsible. But he seems to think that since he found God, he is completely absolved of his crime. Well, Mary Ann Shore didn't like that idea very much, and she admitted to her lawyer not only did she know that Mel was responsible for Brenda's death, she also knew where the body was buried. On January 9th, 1990, Mary Ann agreed to wear a wire during a meeting with Mel. Mary Ann told him the FBI was trying to get her to take a polygraph test, and Mel became enraged. He said, though, they weren't going to have any problems because, quote, "that place we dug is not shallow."
Oh boy.
The following day, Mary Ann led police to the woods behind her old house where Brenda's body was buried. Police discovered the body, which had been wrapped in 4 overlapping black plastic garbage bags and sealed with packing tape. The body was naked, in a fetal position, and bound tightly with rope from a clothesline. Under the body was a package containing Brenda's clothing from the day she disappeared. Her jewelry and purse remained missing. The body was officially identified through dental records as Brenda Schaefer. She was described as shy, quiet, warm, and loving. Brenda was just 36 at the time of her death. While there were signs of abuse to the body, there was not enough evidence to determine an official cause of death. It is believed Brenda may have been alive when she was buried.
Mm.
The day after Brenda's body was found, Mel Ignato was arrested for her murder. Both of Brenda's parents died within 13 months of their daughter's body being found. Essie died in July 1990 at the age of 74, and John died in February 1991 at the age of 77. Both had pre-existing conditions, but were just never able to recover after the death of their daughter. Mel's mother, Virginia, also died during this time, specifically in May 1990 at the age of 81. So Mel Ignato officially went on trial in the fall of 1991. He was charged with murder, kidnapping, sodomy, sexual abuse, robbery, and tampering with physical evidence. But with no solid evidence linking him to the crime, the only thing the prosecution had was the testimony of Mel's lover, Mary Ann Shore. And I will warn you, again, I kept a lot of specific details out of this episode for a reason, but the following details are still disturbing. Marianne said that she and Mel remained in contact, and he told her his relationship with Brenda wasn't good, sexually speaking. He then suggested that he would bring Brenda to Marianne's house for what Mel called sex therapy class. Mm-hmm. Mel and Marianne spent weeks planning the murder, including digging the grave in August, a month before the murder took place. On September 23rd, Mel showed up at Marianne's house with a brown paper bag. Inside was black garbage bags, duct tape, clothesline that had been cut to the same lengths, several rolls of film, and an Olympus 35mm camera, which had been given to Mel by Brenda at Christmas time. He also brought a vibrator, KY jelly, his wooden fraternity paddle, and a bottle of chloroform. He delivered the items to Marianne's house in his mother's car to avoid being recognized in the area. On September 24th, Brenda picked Mel up at his house between 3:30 and 4 p.m. He had her drive to Marianne's house, and once inside, Marianne locked the door and Mel pulled out a gun. He told Brenda that this was sex therapy class, which would then make her better at sex. Mm-hmm. Brenda asked to go home. Mel said she would only leave after doing as he asked. Mel then forced Brenda to remove all her clothing and jewelry while he took naked pictures of her. He then tied her to a glass coffee table and raped her while Marianne took pictures, including close ups of Brenda's genitals.
Ugh.
Brenda was moved to the bedroom where she was raped, sodomized, beaten with the fraternity paddle, and strangled. The entire rape and torture lasted 5 hours.
Oh.
Mel had a list written out on yellow legal paper, and he refused to stop until he crossed off every single item on the list in order. When he was done, he used chloroform on Brenda until he could no longer feel a pulse. Her body was then bound in the fetal position, and Marianne helped Mel carry her body out to the grave. Mel then used a paring knife to cut a small hole in the rear passenger tire of Brenda's car. He inserted a drywall nail into the hole and then told Marianne to follow him while he drove the car to the interstate. After letting out the remaining air in the tire, he left the vehicle, got into Marianne's car, and she drove him home. Despite talking about horrific and brutal sexual torture, Marianne giggled on the stand, which didn't help her credibility. Neither did the fact that multiple people testified to characterize Marianne as jealous and a liar. Um, jealous like the time she turned Mel into the IRS for tax evasion simply because he wouldn't marry her. She told a friend, if he won't marry me, he won't marry anyone. I'll see to that. Then there was the time that Marianne worked a job which had access to DMV records, and she would look up the license plates of the vehicles belonging to the women that Mel was seeing just to keep an eye on them. A neighbor once stated they witnessed Marianne pull a concrete pillar out of her front yard by herself, suggesting that Marianne had been strong enough to incapacitate Brenda on her own. The defense pushed the narrative that Marianne killed Brenda in a jealous rage and that Mel had nothing to do with it. They said Marianne was accusing Mel of the crime to try and get back at him for being engaged to another woman when he refused to propose to her. But the jury, whether they felt she was telling the truth or not, the jury's biggest hangup was that glass coffee table. They refused to believe that the table could take the weight of two adults without breaking. So that's what it took for them to go, I don't know if Marianne's telling the truth. So on December 22nd, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty.
Mm.
Mel told reporters the verdict was the best Christmas present he ever had. And while he was acquitted, investigators refused to give up on justice because they truly believed Mel was responsible for Brenda's murder. So just 18 days after that verdict, a federal grand jury met to consider a 3-count indictment against Mel. Because when they compared Marianne's testimony from the trial with Mel's grand jury testimony from 1989, they noticed inconsistencies, like how Mel claimed he had nothing to do with Brenda's murder, that he didn't know what happened to her jewelry, and that Brenda and Marianne had never met. Well, Mel told the jury he had no contact with Marianne before Brenda's death. Well, Marianne said, that's not true. And then Mel told them Brenda dropped him off that on the night of September 24th, but Marianne said she was the one who dropped him off. And I love in this case that they're taking Marianne's word as she's telling the truth, but the
Right.
jury, didn't. But I'll take what I can get. Mel was charged with perjury, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. He pleaded not guilty. But on February 3rd, Marianne was officially charged with tampering with evidence. She was given the maximum sentence of 5 years and sent to Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women. So Mel is out free. His accuser's in prison. It feels very backwards. Although I do think Marianne deserved prison time for the part she played in Brenda's murder. But she clearly made a deal in exchange for testifying against Mel. but the deal didn't save her completely. As investigators prepared for Mel's perjury trial, they went through items that had been confiscated from Mel's house with a search warrant. One item was a little pocket calendar, which had various words written on the days leading up to Brenda's death. The words had been crossed out with a pen, so investigators sent the calendar to a lab that was able to read the words under the pen marks, and it showed multiple dates where Mel wrote call MA or date BS. The assumption is that MA was Marianne and BS was Brenda Schaefer. Mel, of course, denied this, saying MA was a coworker, which he also couldn't find a coworker with MA as initials.
Oh
So,
boy.
he really struggled there. Um, a real Hail Mary. On September 23rd, in that calendar, the day before Brenda's murder, Mel had written MA shovel supplies. He said, well, the supplies were completely unrelated to Brenda's death.
Uh-huh.
Mel's perjury trial dragged out before it ever started because of constant requests for a change of venue. But while they were waiting for an official trial start, a carpet installer was ripping out old carpet at a house on October 1st, 1992. The installer noticed an uncovered heat duct under the old carpet. And when he looked inside, because he thought it was weird to have it not have any sort of cover to it, when he looked inside, he said it was about 10 inches deep and then it angled. But near the bottom, just before it angled, was a clear Ziploc bag duct taped to the inside of this duct. Inside that bag were three black plastic film canisters and some random jewelry like necklaces, bracelets, and rings. The worker had no idea what to do with it. He just gave it to the police. And the police noticed the previous owner of that house was Mel Ignato.
Here we go.
They had the photos developed and were horrified to realize that they were the photos of the attack on Brenda Schaefer. There were 105 photos in total, some of which included Mel, who was naked at the time. But just to ensure that that naked man in the photo was Mel, and I think also to fuck with him, police forced Mel to remove his clothing at the station so they could take photos to compare them with the photos they found. Mel refused because he said that would be humiliating. They got a court order and forced him to do it. And
I
sure
love that for
enough,
him.
the body hair and moles on his body matched exactly the man in the photo with Brenda, meaning Marianne was telling the truth all along, and the jury was wrong to get hung up on a glass table. But please do not think that I'm considering Marianne a hero or anything. She said she was scared of Mel, and I have compassion for her there. But she watched Brenda get tortured for hours and did nothing. She helped bury the body and left Brenda's family with no answers for 16 months. Not to mention, after the grave was dug, Marianne had a month to come forward and prevent this from ever happening. But she didn't. Marianne witnessed a brutal attack and murder and just went about her life, including getting married and moving to a new house. And only when it seemed that Mel had let himself off the hook for the crime did Marianne come forward. If she had come forward immediately, there could have been DNA evidence against him that would have put him away for life. Also, with those rolls of film, the jewelry found all belonged to Brenda. Her purse, however, was never found. Mel, of course, was immediately arrested. And here's the part where you want to rage. Because of double jeopardy, he could not be tried for the same crime in the same state.
Mm.
Meaning, despite now having physical proof that Mel was responsible for Brenda's murder, legally, he could not be charged again in this case with murder, kidnapping, sodomy, sexual abuse, robbery, or tampering with evidence. But what they did have was a perjury charge. And now they had proof that Mel had lied and he did know what happened to Brenda and he absolutely was involved. So Mel was offered a deal. If he pleaded guilty to the perjury charges, he would get a reduced sentence. They had physical proof he lied. I don't know why a deal came into play at all, um, but the deal meant that Mel had to admit to what he had done. The jewelry and photos were found in his house. Anyhow,
Yeah.
I would not have offered him a deal. He said that, yeah, it happened exactly how Marianne had said. He forced Brenda to drive to Marianne's house, where he then physically and sexually assaulted Brenda for hours before killing her with chloroform. He said after burying the body, he threw out Brenda's purse. And I think the most enraging part, that whole like jury's hang up that they found it hard to believe that a glass coffee table wouldn't break if two people were on top of it. Um, I mean, there were photos proving it, but also if the table had been made from another material, would they have believed the story? It was just something about it being a glass table that they were like, never going to happen. Mel was sentenced to 60 months for perjury and another 37 months for making false statements to the FBI for a grand total of 8 years and 1 month in prison. Not exactly justice, the justice that Brenda deserves, but at least it wasn't another acquittal. While in prison, Mel earned more than 4 years off his sentence for educational training and good behavior, and he was released in 1997. But soon after, Mel was charged with perjury again, this time for lying during the Spalding trial back in 1989. William Spalding was Brenda's boss, who was so convinced that Mel was responsible for Brenda's disappearance that he sent Mel a threatening letter. Well, during that trial, Mel denied any involvement in Brenda's disappearance. But now that he confessed, prosecutors decided they could charge him with perjury for that old trial, and it's delicious. So kudos to the investigators who refused to let Mel get away with Brenda's murder to the point where they found any possible reason to put that monster behind bars. For the second perjury charge, he was sentenced to 9 years. He was officially released in 2006. So overall, he ended up spending about 10 years in prison for two separate perjury charges, and yet not a single day for the brutal rape and murder of Brenda Schaefer. In September 2008, 20 years after brutally murdering Brenda Schaefer, Mel Ignato was found dead in his apartment in Louisville. There was no sign of foul play. It is believed that Mel fell into his glass coffee table and
Shut up.
bled to death.
Oh my God.
I could not think of a more fitting end for such a piece of shit. He was 70 at the time. Marianne Shore was released from prison in 1995 after serving just over 3 years of her 5 year sentence. She died in August 2004 at the age of 54. Her death was listed as natural causes at 54.
Mm.
And I wish that I could end this horrifying episode on some sort of bright note, but unfortunately, the horrors keep coming. Brenda Schaefer was buried in January 1990, 3 days after her body was discovered. But what her family did not know was that during the autopsy, the FBI wanted to confirm Brenda's identity with fingerprints. Apparently, they weren't happy enough with just using the dental records, but the medical examiner wasn't able to get a good set of prints. So, without her family's knowledge, Brenda's hands were removed from her body and sent to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. So when Brenda was buried, her family had no idea her hands were missing. Her family discovered the truth 2 years later when a detective accidentally let it slip that Brenda's hands were still in a morgue somewhere. And what's worse, Brenda's family had to get a court order to get her hands back. In February 1992, Brenda's brothers were finally able to have the hands reunited with their sister's body. I don't even know how to say that Brenda deserved so much more than what she was given. Same with her family, but my God. Reporting for this incredibly heavy episode, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Wowzer.
Yeah.
Listen, didn't see that twist coming at the end there.
Mm-hmm.
My my God.
Yeah.
Well, listen, let's hit the can, let's grab a drink, and we'll be right back to discuss our thoughts on the Brenda Schaefer episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right, clap two on three. One, two, three. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the Brenda Schaefer case. What a horror show. What a true horror show. So many thoughts, though. I think a big thing for me with this is it's interesting to me why she had to die. It feels like because he has this pattern, obviously, with sexual
Sure.
domination and being in control and all of those things. And it's interesting because it feels like the person he didn't have that with was Marianne. It feels like it's like whatever their relationship was, um, he was getting a certain amount of his needs met,
Yeah.
which is interesting because that wasn't enough for him. So then it was like he needed to go find someone, and that really speaks to like the depravity to me of Mel is that it sounds like Marianne, and I'm completely speculating, but it's like it sounds like she was perhaps doing more things sexually that he was aligned with, but that's not ultimately what people who are like him want. They want it to be with somebody who doesn't want it. That's a whole part of the like
Right.
control and darkness of all of it. But I guess what's interesting to me is again like this was so premeditated. He had the list of things that he wanted to do to her. I don't understand why she had to die unless that was part of his ultimate fantasy overall. And that this was just the first time he was like going for the whole thing. I think it's interesting that Marianne is just seemingly along for the ride. Like, listen, the one thing that was coming up for me the whole time, because I know that it's one of those things where when we hear about cases like this and we hear about a woman who is potentially like embroiled in one of these situations, that it's like, oh,
Sure.
she was, potentially afraid for her life and was just doing what he told her to do. I what always comes to mind for me is, of course, Canadian serial killers, Paul Bernardo and Carlo Homolka. And the
Right.
way that it was always portrayed, early on in the case was that Carlo Homolka was this victim and was one of his victims and was just doing as she was told. And then, of course, there was evidence that ended up coming out later in the game that did show that she was as much of a part of it as he was.
Mm.
And this feels, I'm not trying to, you know, speak ill of the dead, i.e. Marianne, but I don't know that I fully buy that she was doing any of this under duress, or the duress was not as significant as I think maybe they were trying to make it seem. I mean, digging a grave for someone like over a month in advance, like she had a lot of time to sit with the fact that she knew that this woman was going to die. A lot of
100%.
time. It's not like they lived together. You know what I mean? There was time, a lot of time that Mel and Marianne would be apart.
Yep.
So it's not like it's one of those things where it was like he was keeping her, locked up or in some sort of terrible situation and she didn't have a choice. Like she had downtime where she could have at any point gone, I need to pull the plug on this,
Right.
but she didn't. And I don't know. She's a fascinating character to me in all of this. I mean, the fact that again, she was like, you know, looking for ways to try and get back at him. Like, he's not going to marry me after 10 years, then I'm going to turn him into the IRS. But then he still went to her to say, help me kill my girlfriend.
Yeah.
and she did it.
I know.
So it's like, what is the nature of that friendship? Like that he knew that even after all that happened, she turned him into the IRS. He ended up having to do a small amount of jail time for that crime. Like,
Hmm.
but he was like, that's the person that's my ride or die who will literally witness me, document me doing these horrific acts to somebody, and then I know she'll help me bury the body. What is this? I don't know. I find that fascinating. Um, Going back to the beginning, closer to the beginning, when you said that after Brenda went missing, that Mel had asked to go be in her room in her parents' house to pick up on vibrations of where she may be, I
Yeah.
assume that was him just scanning the place to try and hide any potential evidence. That's what immediately popped
Yes.
into my mind.
Oh, 100%. Police apparently had a camera set up and were expecting something, but they said he just like sat in there, probably reveling in knowing exactly what he had done.
Oh yeah. Um, Also, I want to give a shout out to um, I have some friends that live in Louisville, and
Hey.
that's how you say it apparently.
Oh, I know. It's
I'm
gonna.
not. That's not a note for you. That's remarking that that's a thing for me. Um, it's absolutely
Sure.
Louisville, but the locals again, Louisville. What I like is that
Of
it's like,
course.
hey, just stop trying to make consonants.
Sure.
That's what that is.
Sure.
Um, the fact that his main interest going into university was getting into the fraternity, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
That's a red flag. Uh, all of the details about his first wife, horrific. Him faking a week-long business trip and even having postcards sent, like all of this is just, it's fascinating to me. Carrying around the dick sucker saying, lick my dick, like
Oh,
the lollipop. This man is,
that's bachelorette behavior.
oh, it's bad.
But
It's
it's
bad.
not a man in his late 30s.
And it's also so sad that this is a man who went on to brutally assault and murder a person, and he had
Yep.
been given full custody of those kids with that first wife.
Yep.
The system, man. Um, Marianne claiming, oh, he'd never been violent with me, but then we also know that they had potentially been having an affair that entire time.
Hmm.
Their connection is, again, so twisted and fascinating to me. Calling something sex tablets, that's going to haunt my dreams.
Yep.
Um, 6 weeks after she disappeared, he started dating someone else. And we have to think, how did Marianne feel about that? Marianne, who's
Oh.
carrying this massive secret, like, was she really okay with him dating someone else? Yeah, I know that she may have been in another relationship, but like, it felt like she had this like want for him to be all about her.
Oh, yeah. She was obsessed with him, I think.
And I think she thought, well, if I do this, then maybe, you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
I have a real question here. Well, first of all, I wrote down they dug the hole over a month in advance. Marianne. That's that was my
Hmm. Hmm.
judgmental. Come on.
Yeah.
Um, oh my God, I love that I lost my own train of thought by saying that. Uh, I'll get back to it. I'll get back to it. I should have gone with what I was originally saying. Um, I just I think the thing that's so chilling to me again is like she just sat on it. Like
Yep.
all of this was happening, she just sat on it until it suited her. Like I know that he's the one that did the crime, but again, to me, she was as premeditated. If she was a
Yeah.
part of digging that hole ahead of time and then was willing to photograph this entire thing and then help him hide the body, like she's culpable. That's a sec
100%.
accessory to murder, period. Um, the fact that he wrote out the list of his sexual depravities, and then he's like,
Mhm.
I have to do them all and do them in this order. That's like
Yeah.
OCD style. Like that's like another thing.
Mhm.
Like what the hell is that element to this man's twisted mind? I just found that chilling. This is what I was gonna say. The jury getting hung up on the glass coffee table.
Mm.
Did they not have a glass coffee table brought into those jurors? I mean, we know how this goes. There'll be juries that are hung up on something and then they like ask to have something acted out or ask to see,
Yeah.
some piece of evidence. Like to me, I'm going to go out on a limb here. The actual glass coffee table was probably available to them. Like it's
Yeah.
more than plausible that the police, if they didn't already have it in custody, they could have absolutely gotten it. I would assume that at some point it would have been taken in this as a piece of evidence. Uh, Maybe not, but again, to me, it's like, couldn't they have gotten a glass coffee table and then seen if it'll hold two people? Because to be honest with you, never even entered my mind that it couldn't hold two people. That tempered glass
Right?
is extremely solid. It's not thin glass. Like we've all seen a glass coffee table.
It's like they heard the word glass and they were like, glass is breakable. And
It's
then they
so
just couldn't get past it.
it's so wild because again, that was the thing that got him off and why he was never able to be charged with this horrific rape and murder ever again.
Yeah.
It's such
Which,
a, I don't know, that just felt so avoidable to me, but again,
yes.
I don't know. Um, all right, just a couple of other thoughts. Well, and then of course, the fact that he died by falling into that glass coffee table.
Hmm.
I mean, for a man who was sitting in her room trying to find her by her vibrations, I'd say there's a little bit of
The,
witchery,
the
a little
vibrations
woo-woo
found
happening
him
there.
this time.
If
Yeah.
if the thing that got him off was also the thing that took him out. That's wild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think karma did it right in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. I love that the police were like, "Hey, what are other perjury charges? What are other ways we can keep him in prison?" Like, God bless. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, it's so tragic to me that he didn't do actual time for the crime. The
Yeah,
fact,
I
the
know.
way he was found out too, it's so, again, it's so creepy. It's like you, here's, and this is me just psychologist hatting for a second. Like he commits this horrific 5 hour assault. He has his ex-girlfriend photographing the whole thing,
Yep.
and he never developed the photos. Now, I understand he can't take those photos to get developed anywhere. Um,
Right.
he would have to potentially do them himself or whatever. But like, I think the thing that's so sick about that to me is that his trophy, like this series of 105 photographs,
Right.
he just wanted to know that he had them in his house. He just wanted to know that they were there. So he puts them in a fucking Ziploc and puts them in like a duct in the house. Like,
Yeah.
that's one of the pieces because it's not abnormal for killers to do that, as we know. If you've listened to this show for any amount of time, we've heard these kinds of things before. But I think that's one of the things that just like turns my stomach. Like the idea that he knew it was there and that was enough. Like knowing that he had it in the
Right.
house was enough. That's so creepy and sick to me. Not that I think
Yes.
that it's better to have the photos and look at the photos, but I think that my brain can just wrap itself around that a little bit more. Like I can wrap my head around like you did this terrible thing and you want to be able to revisit it. I think that's disgusting,
Of
but
course.
I can wrap my head around the logic of that. The logic of no, no, I'm never going to develop these rolls of film. They're just going to sit hidden under a carpet in a heat duct in my
Mhm.
house. And that's fulfilling to me. That shit, that again, that's the stuff that
Mm-mm.
haunts my nightmares. Like that's like it's such another level of twisted to me.
100%.
So gross. And then of course the last thing I need to comment on is the absolute horror show that this
Uh-huh.
woman's hands were removed and then never returned until a large amount of time later.
Yeah.
I got a couple things. I got a couple things to say. Now, I know we're in a time where, you know, DNA was not prevalent.
Sure.
So we were definitely going by dental records and whatnot. Like, I get that. I get that we didn't have the technology we have now. I got a couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
One, how were you not able to get good enough prints off of her hands when they were attached to her body? How would the prints be better with her hands removed? I don't
Yeah.
hear a science there
No.
because there's also, I can't remember what it was, and it was probably fiction, so forgive me. And I shouldn't be saying that this is like the way things go, but there was something I was watching, and it was a people are going to be screaming at us right now, going like, "It's this, Lauren, and it's a piece of fiction, and you're out of your mind."
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there was this thing where like it was like a decomposed body, and they basically used like say they injected like saline or something to like puff up the finger again.
Okay. My brain is seeing it. Yeah.
Remember? And
Yeah.
then they got the fingerprint that way.
I don't think that
That's
was real.
I don't think it was real either. But there's got to be something to that. There's more science to me with that than let's cut off her hands because maybe then we'll get better fingerprint. Like,
Hmm.
I guess for me, I just don't understand how removing the hands was going to solve the problem that they were having. If they were
Yeah.
unable to get good fingerprints off of her hands, I just feel like there has to be something like this thing I'm remembering that I'm certain is not real,
And I've absolutely seen it because I'm
right?
seeing it in my head and I'm just like, what the hell was that?
But it also feels like that feels like there could be science to that. I could understand it being like,
Sure.
but I guess my next question is where were they pulling the prints from that they were matching to? Like where were the fingerprints coming from? Her car steering wheel? Like
Sure.
I guess okay. And listen, you may know the answer to this and you may not. And I don't need to belabor it because I know that this is a particularly gruesome and horrific episode. Was her face badly disfigured?
It didn't say.
This is what I don't understand because one would think if her dental records matched and like the other physical things matched, like she was the right height and weight and hair, and unless her face had undergone like, I guess there could be some level of decomposition if she had been buried for some amount of time, but not to be creepy, but if she had been buried in tight plastic bags with duct tape, then she would probably be better preserved than if her body was just put into the ground. Again, these are things that we learn
Of
from doing
course.
this show long enough. I guess I'm just really horrified. I'm really quite horrified that they not
Yeah.
only removed her hands, but then the hands just kind of were like left floating in a morgue somewhere. And like, for what? For what? I just, I can't understand how that was the move, how that made sense, how that was going to solve the problem.
Of course. I was quickly, desperately trying to find what that is
What
because I
was
can
it?
see it in my head and I can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
But
Somebody will tell
it's
us.
gotta be an episode of something or
I feel like I
yeah.
watched it rather recently, like within the last to 8 months.
Oh,
We'll figure it
yeah,
out.
I don't know.
Or again, there's listeners at home right now that are screaming at us. They're shouting
Sure.
at their devices. They're going, Lauren, Christy, it's this. Anyway, my point just is like, I guess final thing I'll say, and this is a science question. Let's say for whatever reason, okay, the dental records match, but they want a second, they want two-factor authentication, you know what I'm saying.
Authentication you're doing right.
Authentication. Authentication, Jesus. What happened to her hands? What happened to her hand? Like, how were they not able to lift prints? I guess I just feel like that's one of the oldest forms of detective work. Like
Sure.
fingerprints have been around. Like this is, I mean, we're talking like hundreds and hundreds of years that technology has existed, right? Like it's gotten better over time. But I guess I'm just like, I think what will haunt me and what I know I'll probably never have the answer to is like, why weren't they able to get proper prints? Why was the science in their minds, let's cut these hands off? That'll help.
Oh,
Like, I just, it's just so sad. It's so tragic that this poor woman met this horrific demise, this terrible, terrible, awful experience. And then her body was desecrated again
I
by those who were
know.
supposed to be helping.
It's
And I
like,
know that stuff, I know that autopsies, I know that things happen and like I get it, but to me it's like the fact that I guess if I can see past them cutting off the hands to begin with, which is hard for me, but let's do that. You got to reunite. It shouldn't take years. It should be there
no,
should be a level of respect to the body, period.
100%. It's like the one episode I'm going to go so big on yes to the police and the investigators. It's like they
Yeah,
had to drop the ball in some way.
they couldn't let themselves have the win.
Yeah, they couldn't just leave it. They couldn't leave it.
Oh, God.
Mhm.
Well, listen, what a case. What a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Oh, a full nightmare, this one. I'm
Yeah.
I'm excited to be out of it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm glad that we got to tell her story. Hopefully that will again honor her in some way because she was really not uh really everybody dropped the ball. Not her family, but you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, well, listen, Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. Thank you for taking us on this horror show journey, which I
Mhm.
am so grateful to be on with you, my best gal.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
And we thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/, True Crime and Cocktails for more information about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Gloria Vale.
Gloria Vale. Again, another one I don't know about. Can't wait to learn about it from you. Christy, do you want to tell do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Um, oh God, I wish I knew even a single Beanie Baby name. I guess goodnight, Ty? That's who makes them, right?
Good night to the platypus.
Yes.